Good afternoon. Hope everybody is, I want to thank everybody for joining today. My name is Palo Pierce. I am a Vice President at Eduporium, and I want to welcome you to our Social Emotional Learning webinar series. And this is our last and most important presenting team. And we're pleased that Ozobot has agreed to join here today. Tara Renaud is the Director of Sales. She's joined, and also Melissa Toohey, who's the Director of Education. And so we're pleased that they've joined today. From a logistics perspective, we encourage people to ask questions, and there's some questions and answers and chat stuff. We look forward to having a open and lively discussion. We are going to be taping it, and what you'll see at the end here in a couple of days, we'll forward out an email that will have any types of content discussed here, any URLs that are great for learning, and a copy of the actual presentations and the taping so that you can get access to it if you weren't able to attend the whole time. So I just wanted to take a second and explain who Eduporium is. Eduporium, we're a one-stop site for educational technology products for classrooms, libraries, after-school programs, and colleges. Everything from virtual reality, augmented reality, to coding robots, especially with our partner here, Ozobot. We are located in Newton, Massachusetts. We're on a variety of different collaborative contracts to make purchasing easier for you. And we are a certified minority business enterprise. I have put the contact details if you're interested is to sales at Eduporium or our phone number. The big thing we'd like to do is make sure we understand your educational vision, what you're trying to accomplish. And then we'll make sure that the products from Ozobot or what have you are definitely configured to properly support your vision, and you have the service and support or professional development and training. Because we find one of the things we're working together as a mission organization is to ensure the technology is used effectively, and that all the solutions that we propose, especially with Ozobot, they have multiple levels. And one of the things we're going to accomplish today is to show you that there are multiple levels to these products that allow you to work with people at the lower end and the kids at the higher end. And we love those scalable solutions. With that, I am going to hand it over to Melissa, who will get into our discussion today.
Hi, everyone. My name is Melissa Toohey. I'm going to share my screen here just so everyone can see our slides. Excited to be here with you all today. What we're going to do is we'll go over some housekeeping items with our introductions, give you a demo into Ozobot's 2 ways to code. We'll talk about SEL with Ozobot and our lesson library and our free video lesson resources. And then we'll talk about funding resources as well. Feel free to pop in any questions into the Q&A, and we'll be monitoring the chat as well. So again, I'm Melissa Toohey, and I'm the Director of Education here at Ozobot. I'm a former teacher, taught kindergarten and first grade, and founded a coding, engineering, and design thinking program in South LA at a Title I school. I've coached teachers in implementing computer science, and when I'm not at Ozobot, I am at UCLA pursuing my doctoral degree in where I'm researching computer science implementation at the elementary school level. So live and breathe computer science instruction, and I'm excited to share all that we have with you today. So I'll pass it to Tara to introduce herself.
Hi, everyone. My name is Tara. I'm the Director of Sales here at Ozobot. I have been with Ozobot for the past 7 years, pretty much since we went to market back in 2014. And we've grown from solely selling Ozobot Bit now to Ozobot Evo, which we'll be focusing on today. So I'll hand it back over to Melissa.
Great. Thanks, Tara. So many of you know that you're probably here because you're interested in computer science implementation and using robotics. So just to set the scene a little bit, we know that computer science is super important, but do we know why? And just to set that context, we know that states are mandating computer science education through adoption of standards. We know that many teachers are not prepared to teach the content. There's no formal training, and there are very minimal formal teacher prep programs that actually prepare teachers to teach computer science. And we know that low SES and highly diverse schools have less access and to computer science instruction than their high socioeconomic status counterparts. So we wanted to make sure that as an organization, as many students as possible have access to computer science and robotics content, because we know that that's part of our students' future. So I'm going to pass it to Tara to talk about Ozobot as a platform.
Yeah, so I'm going to give everyone just a little tip before I get started. If you haven't done so already, if you go to the top right-hand corner of Zoom, you'll see there's a little button that says View. If you can click on that and then click on side-by-side speaker, then you'll solely be able to see my camera. So you'll be able to expand my camera and see exactly what's going on, because I'm going to jump into the 2 ways to code now. So let me go ahead and share my overhead cam. So we're just briefly going to touch on Ozobot, which is our 1-inch robot. I always like to point out its size because it's small, but it's mighty. This robot is very desk friendly, so it allows students to code and program right on the desk that they're using. You do not have to create a big space or move around desk to be able to use Ozobot. I also like to point out that it is very sturdy. It looks fragile, but this robot will roll off tables onto the floor all the time and it still holds up. You'll see I'm turning it on and it's still working. So I always like to point that out. With Ozobot, there are 2 different ways to code. And Melissa, can you go ahead and click on the next slide? Perfect. So our first way to code is screen-free with markers and paper. And our second way to code is through Ozobot Blockly, which is a block-based editor. If your students have used any editor such as Scratch, Tinker, Blockly, then they'll be very familiar with that second way to code. But the first way to code is what we'll be focusing on first. And I will give a quick overview. You'll see my paper here. Now, with this first way to code, we do use markers. All of the products that you purchase come with a set of markers. If you purchase a classroom kit, then you'll get a classroom set of markers. These are not special markers. These are regular washable markers. So you can use any other brand of marker. We just use a color combination of red, green, and blue that Ozobot recognizes as different color codes. So just to give you an example, here on the bottom of my Ozobot, there are optical sensors. So that's what allows Ozobot to see those different colors. So when I take my markers and I draw a colored line on a white sheet of paper, set my Ozobot down, you'll see that it's now detecting the color and it is showcasing that color on its LED lights. We do have 1 LED light on the top and 5 LED lights all around the front. And these are all individually programmable through Ozobot Blockly as well. And I'll show you that when we get to that section in just a second. So, and how we introduce coding and programming with these colors is we have come up with a unique set of color code sequences that allow the robot to do different commands. Everything from speed commands, we can make it slow down, we can make it go into turbo mode and go very fast. And then we also have direction commands. So for example, if we were doing a lesson with the students and they needed to get their Ozobot from home to school, and it couldn't go to the scary woods and it couldn't go to the amusement park, then our Ozobot would need to make a right turn at this intersection in order for it to successfully make it to school. So here, before the intersection, the students will color in a unique color code sequence. In this case, since we need the Ozobot to go right, the color code sequence is blue, red, green. I'm sorry, you may not be able to see this as well, but we do have color code sheets that we can share with you after the presentation. And then once that color code is ready and drawn in, I'll set my Ozobot down and you'll see it reads that color code, and at that intersection, it makes a right turn every time, and it's successfully at school having a really good time right now. So that's just a general overview of the first way to code. I'm going to move on to our second way to code right now, which is through Ozobot Blockly, and I am going to share my screen so that you can see our Ozobot Blockly editor. Perfect. So Ozobot Blockly is web-based. You can pull it up on any device that connects to the web. So if your students are using Chromebooks, they'll go to ozobotblockly.com on their Chromebook and they have access to the editor, similar with desktops and laptops as well. There are 5 different levels that the students can work within. Level 1 is pre-reader. For those younger students, pre-K, K, who are just learning how to read or cannot read just as well yet, they can still put together programs because each one of these blocks are pictures or icons. As we move into level 2, you'll see that there are, we've moved over into words now. And as I move through these different levels, more categories are added. And you'll see in levels 4 and 5, there are some pretty advanced coding categories here: math, variables, functions, arrays, list. So those students who have had experience coding before, they'll be more comfortable in levels 4 and 5. Whereas if their students are just beginning, they'll probably stick within levels 2 and 3. I'm personally more comfortable in 2, so that's where we'll be working right now. And I'm going to put together a very quick program to see how easy it is. So I will just drag and drop these blocks into my editing space. I want my Ozobot to move forward, let's say 8 steps. I want it to skate backwards. Let's have it go backwards. And then I want it to do a spin to the left, and we will top it off with a disco light effect. So now that I've created my program, I am going to turn on my robot. And I will come over here to this little icon that looks like a robot, or Evo, and I will hit connect. Now, Evo is Bluetooth compatible, so it can connect to Bluetooth, laptops, desktops, and you can send over all of the programs via Bluetooth. So unfortunately, you can't see it, but my Bluetooth screen opened up and showed me all devices that are available, and I was able to locate my Evo. So now I'm connected. You'll see that my Evo is connected right here. And as soon as I'm ready to run my program, I'll hit that run program button. My Ozobot's moving forward 8 steps, doing the back walk, the spin to the left, and now the little disco light effect. So it just took a few seconds to create the program, connect the robot, and send it over to the robot for it to execute that program. So that's a very, very brief overview on the 2 ways to code. I know there's a lot more information out there and a lot of teacher guides, but I'm going to hand it back over to Melissa so she can dive into the content.
Hey, Tara, got a quick question. On the demo you were just showing early on, there was a video of markers connected to the Ozobot, the Evo.
Mm-hmm.
How are they connected? Someone was asking.
That was a picture that we took from someone who was using Ozobot in the classroom, and I believe they just either taped or twist tied the marker to the robot.
Did they?
To be honest, yeah.
Cool. And then another question that comes up, I know you just did that with Bluetooth. How would this work with Chromebooks?
Yeah, Chromebooks have Bluetooth compatibility as well. So you'll be able to connect via Bluetooth and send over all the programs.
Perfect. Thank you.
Great. We're going to dive into the social emotional learning aspect of Ozobot and how innovative and creative students can be, and teachers when incorporating this in your classroom. But we'd love to hear how you all have incorporated SEL in your classroom and what that looks like. So if you want to share in the chat, please feel free to. For those of you that are not familiar with SEL, Castle defines SEL as the process which children and adults acquire and effectively apply the knowledge, attitudes, and skills to understand and manage emotions, set and achieve positive goals, feel and show empathy for others, establish and maintain positive relationships, and make responsible decisions. So all of those soft skills that we are teaching as educators can be encompassed by SEL. And if you want to find out more, Castle is a really, really great resource for social emotional learning. For classroom implementation with Ozobot, we have some suggestions for how students could, teachers and students could use this. The bots could be used as a self-regulation activity, calming activities, design thinking and empathy, where students could create maps for their students, for their classmates when they're having different feelings. This could be like a library that students could pull together and go and utilize when they see fit, when there's conflicts in the classroom, or if they feel like they need self-regulation or a calming activity. That's a really, really great way to not only create authentic social emotional learning experiences for your students, but also have them take ownership of regulating their emotions and finding solutions to enhance their social emotional learning. You can also program the bot to show different feelings and use prompts like I feel happy when, I feel sad when, I feel scared, I feel hopeful. And we have different examples coming up that we will share with you of how this has been done in the classroom. I do want to highlight that Ozobot has a free online platform called Ozobot Classroom, where we have a free lesson library for lessons that are kindergarten through 12th grade across a variety of content areas and subjects. So our SEL lessons you will find in there, but you'll also find standards aligned ELA, math, and so on and so forth, all of the content, STEAM content areas. They're also remote friendly. We know that COVID was unpredictable and that students were in situations that were not necessarily consistent. So all of our internally developed lessons do have video content to support student learning, whether they're in the classroom, at home, in a hybrid environment, which we will cover in just a few slides. So check out the Ozobot Lesson Library. Again, it's free to sign up and the resources are free inside. These are the different content areas of the different types of lessons that we have in our lesson library. So if you're interested in more than just SEL, we have plenty of other content areas as well. One of our certified educators, Jessie, has really taken on incorporating social emotional learning with robotics and Ozobot in her classroom. And the two lessons I recommend checking out are her memory maps lesson and her avoiding viruses lessons, which I'm going to share a little bit more about. She did host a webinar with us about a little over a year ago, which we will share the link to that webinar recording to if you're interested in diving into more of what she has to share. But this is just a really quick recap of all the things that she shared with us during that webinar. But in her teaching context, she teaches, I believe, at a military school where there's a lot of transient students. Students are in and out and they're always transitioning, and there isn't a whole lot of regularity and stability for a lot of the students because there's always changes happening. And so she mentioned it in the webinar that in her classroom, she uses the activity of memory maps to help her students process grief and mourning through positive memories. And she front loads this activity by showing a brain pop video all about mourning, and then having a discussion about what it feels like and having students connect to their feelings. Then what she does is she has students create memory maps with Ozobot. So you can see that there's color codes here in the memory maps that students create to celebrate positive memories of something or someone that is no longer in their lives. And this could be anything from students move from another military base to a new town and they're missing their old friends, to losing a pet or a family member. And so she mentioned how this was such a positive social emotional learning lesson for her students to engage and reflect and to really, really process their feelings. Another social emotional lesson that she mentioned was avoiding viruses. And so she front loaded this lesson with the science behind viruses, teaching students about what viruses are and how they're transmitted, and then use color codes to have students create models of how they could avoid viruses to keep each other safe and keep themselves safe from getting sick. She really focuses on the social emotional learning piece of it as well. Another one of her activities was happiness mapping. So she decided to create a whole nother lesson where students focused on happiness, decided what things made them happy, and then coded their bot to represent those things. And I believe there's an example here. Yes, so what she did was she utilized Ozobot Blockly, which is what Tara showed us earlier with our block-based coding, to have her students create a happy dance for their Ozobot. So they talked about happiness, happy moments, what it meant to be happy, and then students used all of that to become creative and construct code with their Ozobot and to display that for their fellow students. Again, the webinar recording is part of the slide deck and you can find it on the Ozobot webinar page as well. Jessie goes much further in depth into the different ways that she promotes social emotional learning. So I highly recommend that you check it out if this is something of interest to you. Other lessons that hit on social emotional learning in our lesson library can be found in this list. These are just a few examples, but there's many more in our lesson library, but we highly recommend checking these out as options. Some examples from our community include using color codes to understand emotions. So let's see if this will actually take us to the actual tweets so that we can see the video here. So if you can see the video here, students were using the Ozobot and color codes to mimic the different feelings that they were feeling and displaying them on their SEL journey. And you can see that they creatively looped around the Ozobot so that it could travel back and forth both ways. Let me get back to the slide deck. Here, there's an example of where students read a story and then created a Ozobot map here to display the emotions that the character felt throughout the story. So this is really great ELA integration for any of your students that if you're doing a read aloud or want to focus on emotions, this is another really great way to incorporate the SEL. And then I think my personal favorite, oh, whoops, I'm gonna move on to the next slide. My personal favorite is this mood face that students created. And you can't see the Ozobot, but I believe they taped these swirly eyes on top of the bot and then created a character with emotions and express their mood using Ozobots. And yeah, you can see the Ozobots peeking through underneath, which is really innovative, really creative, a really great way for students to reflect on their emotions and think about how they can connect to them and express them. Again, connecting to ELA, here on the left-hand side, you can see students are coding their Ozobot to tell those different parts of the story and to think about different character strengths like persistence and flexible thinking. So on our slide deck, we do have other SEL resources for you all to check out. We have compiled this list from Castle and other resources that might be helpful to you. So feel free to check those out. They are linked here in the slide deck. What I do want to share quickly is that Ozobot has content, free content for you to utilize in your classroom. So earlier I mentioned that when COVID hit, we knew that education and schooling was turned upside down. Students were not necessarily, did not necessarily have the consistency in their school day, and teachers were really overwhelmed by what they were faced with and what they were expected to do. We as a company and as an organization really, really wanted to focus on making sure all teachers felt supported so that they could continue delivering computer science instruction no matter what the circumstances were. What we came up with was our video lesson content. Currently, we actually have kindergarten through 8th grade lessons. We're still developing our kindergarten and 1st grade content, so that will be coming soon. But the majority of our content that is available right now is in 2nd through 8th grade, and there's always more being published as we are always internally working on new content to release. We recommend a pacing of 1 lesson per week. So there's enough content currently to get your students through a whole year of computer science with Ozobot. Each activity is about 45 minutes long, depending on the age level and the developmental appropriateness for the students. And all of our content is standards aligned to 1 ISTE standard, 1 CSTA standard, and 1 math or ELA Common Core standard. All of our video lessons include a synchronous lesson plan. So if you're a teacher that's confident in teaching computer science, you know what you're doing, you've used Ozobots before, there's a traditional lesson plan that you can read and then you can just teach with. For any teachers that you might work with that are hesitant or a little bit scared or intimidated by teaching CS or robotics, which is completely expected, and many teachers again have not had the training and don't have familiarity with computer science. And that can be a barrier for students to access computer science instruction. So we were intentional about creating instructional videos. These are for students to use to guide themselves through the lesson and to learn, but we found that many teachers actually use them to guide their teaching. We have certified educators on our team who have actually said, I tried teaching one of the lessons myself and it was a mess. Things were confusing, kids were getting confused, and it was just all over the place, which it happens every so often in the classroom. We know that happens when you're trying something new and trying to be innovative. But that same teacher mentioned to me, I did it with my next class using the instructional video and it went so smoothly. And this was from one of our certified educators that is familiar with our product, confident in teaching all things computer science and STEAM. And she still utilizes our video content because she says that it helps it's like having a second body in the classroom. The video can be used for instruction while she floats around and supports the students that need help. So that's a huge testament to the content that we've created, the fact that we freed up teachers to be able to do a stronger and better job in differentiating for their students. So that instructional video is there for you as well. We also have a student activity guide. All the activity sheets are included and any potential solutions or answer keys that you may need to evaluate your students' learning. So again, in the video lesson, there's all of those elements. These are just some quick examples of what the content looks like with those lesson plans, the videos, and the worksheets for the students. I also want to highlight that in Ozobot Classroom, we have free pacing guides. For kindergarten through middle school, these pacing guides list out all of the video lessons we have available for you. And these range from about 25 to 30 lessons per grade level. And we highly recommend that you check these out because they spell out all of the basics. We start with the basics, and let me actually see. We recommend you start with the basics and go from there. Again, there's 25 to 30 lessons that you can use right off the bat with little prep. The prep is pretty much charging the bots, making sure they're ready to go and getting your students ready to watch the video or to follow your instructions. But we do recommend, if you can't go through all 30 of those lessons with your students, to start with the basics, which would be the introduction to Ozobot Get to Know Evo lesson, where we cover all the hardware components of the bot, because we deeply believe students should have an understanding of what they're working with before they launch into the abstract ideas of coding and computer science. So we're very explicit about covering the hardware components before diving into any of the content. If you don't have time to do all 30 of those lessons, we do recommend starting with the basic training for color codes and Ozobot Blockly, where you and your students will be onboarded to the basic capabilities of the bot. In the color codes basic training, it shows you pretty much everything that Tara showed you in her little demo about the line following and the LED light color switching and using basic color codes. In the Ozobot Blockly basic training, we go over all of the basics of the Ozobot Blockly platform, which includes how to navigate around Ozobot Blockly, how to build your first program, and how to send it to your bot so that your bot runs the program. So with our video lessons, you can see that with our Introduction to Color Code series, we start with a 9-lesson series to onboard students and yourselves, teachers, if you're unfamiliar, to all of the basics of the Ozobot color codes. We take every single part of the color code chart and we break it down into a digestible lesson so that students understand what every color code does and how it works. We start with basic training and then we cover all of the skills afterwards, like speed, direction, special moves, timers, so on and so forth. You'll notice that for lesson 5 and for lesson 9, these are skills checks, and we are very intentional about these skills checks. What we do is we teach a lesson and we ask students to apply all of the concepts that they learned in previous lessons to apply them to a real life scenario in the skills check. These are also differentiated by grade levels because we know that kindergartners are learning very differently and their developmental appropriateness is very different for a kindergartner than a 5th grader. So we followed the CSTA computer science standards to create those skills checks based on the standards outlined by CSTA for those age bands. In 2nd through 5th grade, we have an Ozobot Blockly introduction series. The kindergarten and 1st grade series is coming soon, so keep your eyes peeled for that. But in this series, you'll notice again, we go through all of the basics of computer science, from sequences to loops to conditionals and variables. Again, we have those skills checks for lesson 5 and lesson 8 to make sure students are retaining the knowledge and applying the knowledge that they've learned from previous lessons. And in middle school, we dive a little bit deeper. We know that middle schoolers can handle a bit more than our elementary school age students. So we want to push them and challenge them and really have them think conceptually about the concepts that they're learning while learning the basics. Because we know not all middle school students come into computer science classrooms or classrooms in general with any background in computer science. So this is a perfect way to lay a foundation for your students, whether or not they've had background in robotics or computer science. Again, the skill checks are here, and they cover and review and have students apply all of the concepts that they've learned in the previous lessons in the series. So I'm going to dive into some content integration examples that we have. If you're representing the elementary school levels, we have content integration in math, in STEAM, and ELA. So in 5th grade, this is an example of how Ozobot can be used to teach place value and number forms. This map is a randomization map, and it's used with intention of engagement. What students do is they'll plug in random digits here in the bubbles on the worksheet. They'll color in the ends of each line so it signifies when the bot has reached the end of the line. And then they choose behavioral color codes to have the bot display, to display behaviors as it's traveling over the map. So as Tara mentioned before, when a bot reaches an intersection, it actually makes a random decision if you do not give it a direction to travel in. So what the students do here is that they color in these color codes. They're not directional color codes, so the bot will go and travel randomly. So you can see on this sample solution sheet, for the first solution, the student had their bot travel to 4, then 7, then to the 3 branch, then to the 2 branch, and then the 5, then the 8. And after each digit, they record it in standard form, then they translate that into word form and expanded form. So what I'm going to do right now is show you a quick clip of what our instructional videos look like. So again, this was meant to take the heavy lifting off of teachers so that you can focus on supporting your students. We do begin every video the same way, where we list the materials that are needed. We front load any background information students need to know. We tell them the goals and objectives of the lesson before we dive into the content. What you're going to see now is just one quick chapter in the lesson. We break each video down into digestible chapters so students or teachers can pause and go back and play back anything that might be unclear or anything that they might need to revisit. So this is just one small chapter in the whole video. Ozobot is ready to make a 6-digit number. Are you? We'll place our bot on start. Then we'll watch as it follows the pathway until it gets to a digit. Once it reaches a digit, we will write this digit in the hundreds place under standard form. My bot made it to the number 1. In the first place here, I will write 1. Then we'll repeat this 5 times to program Ozobot to move from start to complete my decimal number. My second number is 0. My third number is 9. Since it's truly random, your bot might choose the same number multiple times. How many digits or places will your number have when you are done? So you can see we're really intentional about making each chapter bite-sized and digestible. And there's a call to action at the end of each chapter, so students know exactly what they're expected to do. Let's see if we have, there's another clip here if you'd like to view it, but essentially in this clip, I believe this is the next chapter where we actually show students how to change it into word form and oh, I'm sorry, this is the same video. But in the next chapter, we actually explicitly show them how to change their number into word form and expanded form. In second grade, this is an example of a map where students are using prefixes to create new words. Again, the randomization feature of the bot is used for engagement, where the bot starts here and it actually travels randomly and will randomly choose an arm to travel down. And what students will code here is our line switch code, which tells the bot to travel over the white space and then find a new line, which is down here, where the bot will, again, find a random line to travel down. So for example, if my bot traveled by re and then crossed the white space and went down happy, I would write the word re for the prefix, record happy as the root, and then say it makes the word re-happy. I would determine as a student that it is not a real word and mark no. And then I'd be tasked with using the root word with a different prefix. So instead of re-happy, I would write down unhappy. So this is a really, really fun, engaging way to teach grammar with your students. And let me share an example of what the video looks like here. Let's place Ozobot on start on the prefix chooser, and it will randomly turn down one of the prefix rows. My Ozobot chose the prefix pre. The Ozobot jumped across the empty space because of the line switch code and headed over to the root word chooser. My Ozobot chose the root word able. On my prefix activity sheet, I will write pre plus able. When I put these two words together, I get the word pre-able. I'll write that on the next line after the equal sign. Can you place your bot on start and choose a prefix and a root word? Great. We're going to go through a couple more examples. Thanksgiving is coming up in a couple of weeks. And if you're looking for activities to do, I highly recommend this social emotional learning lesson that we have called Gratitude Party, where students actually create and draw these nets. They're 3D shapes that they actually build. They list things that they're grateful for, and then they code their Ozobot to travel to a party, a gratitude party where they celebrate all of the things that they are grateful for. So check that out if that's something that you would like to do with your students before the holidays. Let me show you very quickly what the end of this lesson looks like, what the final product looks like. You'll notice that in the, let me pause really quickly, in the map, I black out the color code areas. Ozobot is because we don't want to give students all of the answers. We don't want them to turn into robots that just copy and paste. We do want them to do their own thinking. So in the lessons, we do model for them, but we don't give them all of the answers. So there are certain situations where we do just use black markers to connect the lines, but we task students with figuring out the color codes and thinking on their own. Ready to head to the gratitude party. Before you put your bot on start, make sure all your color codes are filled in. I'm going to use black marker to not give away any of the answers, but you will have color codes. Also, don't forget that your bot will want to do a bit of dancing when it gets to the party. So fill in green, then blue, so that your bot can do a dance when it gets to the party. Power on and place Ozobot at start. Can you dance with your Ozobot? Along with our holiday and seasonal content, I do want to highlight that our team is really dedicated to culturally relevant and sustaining pedagogy. So we want to make sure that students of all backgrounds are represented in what they learn. So check out all of our holiday and seasonal lessons. We're adding more all the time, but we really want students to feel included and reflected in what they are learning. I've even had teachers say that even though their students may not reflect some of these, may not celebrate some of these holidays and traditions, it's a really, really great platform to even share with students who may not share this background or celebrate these holidays for students to actually learn about other cultures. So it's a really, really great and fun opportunity to include cultural celebrations and cultural backgrounds in computer science and what you're teaching. So with that, I believe we have our Q&A that we can jump into. Tara, were there any questions that came up in the chat while I was speaking?
There was one question about the Ozobot moving randomly at intersections. I did address it in the chat. However, I can show a visual of that if I show my overhead camera right now. Okay, so let's go ahead and look at my desktop. So here is an example. Let me grab one of my Ozobots to work with. Here's an example of a line without any color codes or an intersection without any color codes. So when I turn on my Ozobot and I set it down on this line, we'll see that it will start to move forward, and it went straight that time. So now if I put it back at the beginning of this line, let's see what it does. It decided to go straight again that time. Let's see if it does something different a third time. It made a left turn. So it's completely random what it's doing at that intersection. Now here with this intersection, I have drawn a color code before the intersection that tells it to make a right turn. So you'll see now when I put the Ozobot down and it moves forward, it reads that color code, and now it just made the right turn, and it will always make a right turn when it reads that color code. So that is how that's the difference between it moving randomly and then it having a command to follow.
Just, hey, Tara, it's Palo, just a quick question. What are some best practices with, color coding and stuff like that to ensure that the robot does recognize? I think there's a question on, that they're seeing some robots are not recognizing some of the color codes and things like that.
Yeah, definitely. So even with sheets of paper that you're using, you want to make sure that you're calibrating the Ozobot to the specific paper that you're using, as well as the markers. If you're not using an Ozobot marker, or you're using like a different Sharpie or Crayola marker, the black could vary a little. So you want it to be calibrated to the exact colors of the markers that you're using. So with calibrating, all you have to do is take a white sheet of paper, draw a circle about the size of the bottom of the robot. You want to make sure that all of the optical sensors on the bottom of the bot are on this black circle here. So here's the optical sensors that you want to make sure are on the black calibration dot. You hold down the power button until you see the white light flash or Evo make a noise. You set it down. We'll do a little spin. It will calibrate to the white and the black paper. And then that time it actually flashed red, which means that it didn't calibrate properly. So you'll just want to hold down the power button again, set the Ozobot on the black circle, and then it will do this little spin, move up. It just calibrated green, so it's good to go now. So make sure that you're calibrating before you're using it with markers and paper. Also, I know it's a little difficult sometimes for the students to create the exact color code sequences. Their fine motor skills, they need to fine tune them a little bit. So when drawing these color codes, if you notice here, I have a green line and here's a blue line. If I overlap the green and the blue, there's a darker space right here where the Ozobot might read that as black. So that will throw off this color code sequence that will read it as blue, black, green, rather than blue, green. So we do have a lot of our pre-made activity sheets that you can just download and print. We have blank spaces for the students to color in those color codes. And we actually outline how big each color should be so that the students become familiar with drawing the color codes, and eventually they'll be able to free draw those color codes correctly. So I would just be careful of if the colors are overlapping, that will definitely throw off the color sequence.
Great, great. So just a reminder to everybody, we will be sending out a copy of the slides and a copy of the taping to everybody. I think I did see that under the chat. I think that was another question that came up, and I thought there was one other one. Someone asked if you could use black electrical tape or anything else besides, the black magic markers.
It has worked on the black electrical tape before. We have done some things with that, and it's worked. It might not necessarily be the best resource you have to cut those, and you can't easily draw like a curved line with the tape like this. So it has read it before. It just so it's a little difficult to navigate and use. We do recommend instead, say you have an activity sheet and the students draw in the color code, but they did it incorrect. You can use those, what are they called? The label stickers, and just place a label sticker over that color code, and then redraw the color code and then the black line before and after. And then that's kind of like a whiteout for the students.
Great.
Going back to the question that Linda had in the chat about Ozobot's not reading the color codes or recognizing the color codes. Linda, I just wanted to mention, and for anyone else out there, that Introduction to Color Code series, we actually cover all of the best practices of what to do and what not to do when drawing color codes. So I highly recommend that you check that out with your students, because we explicitly state, like, make sure they don't overlap, make sure there's no gaps between the different colors, make sure they're all evenly spaced and the same size. All of those best practices and tips are covered in those lessons through video. So it makes it super easy for you to review with your students. You don't need to remember it yourself. It's all in that video for you.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you, Melissa. And I also think it's a great reminder with Ozobot, your lesson library and stuff like that, that it's free. I mean, that is just a big thing. I've seen the trend with some of the other companies in this space, and they have a tendency to charge. And the fact you guys still have that mission to kind of make sure as many students and teachers get access, it's just excellent. And we really like that. So cool. Any other questions out there?
Looks like there's a question for the link to the video. Linda, if you sign up for an Ozobot Classroom account, what you can do is on the link, let me actually share my screen so I can show you. I'll pull up Ozobot Classroom right now. Again, Ozobot Classroom is a free resource, but once you create an account, let me share my screen here. The easiest way to find lessons, that particular lesson would be under the pacing guides. You can open up your grade level. I'll just open up one as an example. But if you go down to the page with all of the lesson titles and links, the Introduction to Color Codes Basic Training is where we cover those tips that I just mentioned. So when you click on that link, it opens up the lesson plan where you can view the lesson plan, which has all of the materials for you. Again, this is where the traditional lesson plan is, the student page, the answer key, the student worksheets. Alternatively, if you and your students use an LMS, you can click the Share with Students link, and you can copy this link and pop it into your LMS and send it out to your students so that they can work independently. Or alternatively, if you want to do this as whole class instruction, which I've heard a lot of teachers have utilized the videos this way, you can open the lesson as a student, and it takes you to our student view page where you can see the chapters in our videos are here. You can play the video, and then all of the instructions that a student needs to know, covering like the materials, resources, instructions for every chapter, completion checklist, and any feedback they want to give. It's all on this page. So you need to print the activity sheets, there's a link to that as well. So this would be a really, really great resource for you. Again, check out that pacing guide. If you're looking for other lessons, we do have our lesson library where you can use the search function. I do want to note that our lesson library is a mix of community generated lessons and internally created lessons. The community generated lessons do not necessarily have video. So you can find the video lessons with our video lesson filter, and those will all be lessons that are generated internally by our content team. And you'll also know that those are created by Ozobot because there is the Ozobot emblem on the bottom left of each of the picture icons. So just a few tips in navigating our lesson library there.
Cool, Melissa, this is Palo. One other quick question. So if you did, send out that link, does a student have to have an account in the Ozobot library? No, it'll just bring them directly to that lesson. Right?
Exactly. We made it super simple, easy to use so that students don't have a login. There's not another password that they need to remember. There's not another account you need to create as a teacher. You can literally give them that link. They click on it, they can do the content and then turn the paper or whatever it is, whatever artifact you want from them through your LMS that they're already used to or physically to you in a traditional manner. So we've left it super open and super flexible intentionally so that it can serve all teachers and all students in all circumstances.
Excellent. Thank you very much. That was great.
Yeah.
Cool. Other questions out there? Any other questions, concerns, suggestions? I mean, we're open. So I don't see any that I see coming up. I just want to check the chat. I think we've answered a lot. I know that, to summarize, if anything does come up in the meantime here, what we'll do is we'll put out an email with the presentation, copy of the URL to get to the video of this particular session, and then also any other resources that Tara or Melissa have talked about, and put those in there so you have them, and we'll get that out so that it'll be we'll send it out a direct email to you. So with that, I guess I'd like to thank Melissa. Thank you very much for an excellent job. It's just great to be with the Ozobot team, and same with you, Tara. I think it's great to see the hands-on and just a good reminder to see that the fact that it does work. I mean, with the proliferation of Chromebooks out there, that it's not only, they do it off the screen, but they can also do it off the Bluetooth so that the kids can go directly from the Chromebook to the Ozobot using Ozobot Blockly. So want to thank everybody. And I think that's the end. So I want to thank everybody. Thank you very much, the educators. We know it's very tough out there. It's an interesting environment, and we really support you in your endeavors and wish you the best of luck. Have a great Thanksgiving. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye-bye.